I'm Natalie. I'm a senior in high school from New York, and I had a brain injury when I was a sophomore in high school from girls lacrosse, and I was hit in the head, and it took me a year to recover, and I was diagnosed with PCS, post-concussion syndrome, and so now I'm working with Catherine to spread awareness about that. Lacrosse was my childhood love. I played it almost every day. I was on my school team and my out-of-school team, a travel team, and I dedicated so much of my time to it because I really wanted to play in college. So it was something that I loved to do and spent a lot of time doing, and it was where I learned a lot of my determination and teamwork and things like that. So when I had to quit it for my concussion, it was a huge part of me that was now gone. So that was dealing with it almost like in mourning of something that I love to do. And now I had all this free time, and now I had all this, something that I love to do was missing from my life. So I had to fill that void with other things. A lot of my closest friends and a lot of my closest relationships with people were from lacrosse. So I lost my teammates. They were still there, but I didn't see them as much. And for my travel team, I basically dedicated my summers to it. Instead of doing a program or an internship, I would go play lacrosse with my team. And I would go on the weekends, every weekend in the fall, every weekend in the summer. I was going to different states, different parts of the country, doing tournaments. And so I also had practice with them on the weekend. So it was a huge part of my social life, and it was a huge part of my my personal life was of lacrosse. And it made up who I was, especially because, like I said, I learned my determination there. I learned teamwork, being accountable for other people, being accountable for your own actions. And that's all from lacrosse. Not all from lacrosse. That's where I learned and reinforced a lot of those things that made me who I was. Well, basically, after I was released from my neurologist, there was no next stage of the recovery, nowhere else to go after. And I was sort of left on my own for what to do about my symptoms because they were still there and everybody knew it. But there was no plan. There was no, here's a new doctor you can go to, or here's a new program you can try, or this thing that can help your symptoms, or this medication. It was sort of just, we've done all we can and now we're done with you. And so I was sort of left off this cliff, and I was in a moment of desperation. There was nothing I could do, and I was under no one's care. So my neuropsych evaluation helped me after I was released from my neurologist. I had these symptoms still going on from PCS, but I didn't know how to describe them, and I didn't know how to explain that I felt like I couldn't control them, that it wasn't just in my head, that they were real. And so the neuropsych basically showed that the symptoms were validated, that they were real, and that it wasn't just all in my head. And the neuropsych basically gave context for the things that I was feeling and the struggles I was having, and saying, this is hard for you, and why is this hard for you? So the school gave me accommodations during my concussion when I was with the neurologist, and once she released me, they considered that to mean that I didn't need accommodations anymore, and they took them all away. So then I had to fight for them back, and I had to go to the neuropsych, and that's where they realized that I still had the symptoms. And so before that, they almost didn't believe me, and they said there was nothing they could do about it. But then after the neuropsych, because I had a neuropsych from during my concussion and from before, they could compare them and show that I actually did have things in my brain that were going on that were different from before, and that I really wasn't back to myself. Well, I had to leave school, so I was missing a lot of 10th grade, and I had to start junior year at a deficit with my symptoms still going on. I still had PCS, and I basically had to make up all of my 10th grade work, teach it to myself, because there's not an in-school support system for that, and do all of my junior year work, and prepare for college testing, and do my extracurriculars. So my school life was basically put at a halt, and then I had to reinvent the way I study. I had to wake up early in the morning to be able to do my homework. I had to spend every waking moment during my freeze, during my after school time was all doing work just to keep up with the things that everyone else was doing, which was the homework. And I had triple that amount of work, and it was taking me 3 times as long. So I would show up to class and people would think I was prepared like everyone else, but really it took me 3 times as long. And that was sort of the invisible struggle that I didn't necessarily want to tell everybody. But when a big test came around or a big essay, that made me really overwhelmed, cripplingly overwhelmed. Then that's when my symptoms would show to other people. So they would assume that they only came out in these big assignments. So they thought, so to everyone else, it was hard for them to see how I was struggling all the time. And that affected my personal life and my school life as well. So my teachers, it was really hard for me to articulate to my teachers how, what was going on in my head. And then on a more physical level, I had really bad short-term memory, and doing things like mental math were really, really difficult. So when I was doing a reading for homework, it would take me, again, 3 times as long. And writing took me so much longer because I had the words and I had the thoughts, but getting them out on paper or to type them was a real challenge. So every day was really, really difficult, and getting through the day, sitting through classes, you don't realize how difficult that is until you have trouble focusing, can't remember the sentence before, and can't think in your head. Well, actually, all the women, we were talking before the panel, and we all realized that we had so many things in common. We all had a different combination of symptoms, but we still had certain experiences that were the same. So when we were all talking about the different parts of us that were affected by the brain injury, I realized that it wasn't that necessarily one person's experience that resonated with me. It was the fact that we all had all these different things affect us, and all these different issues arise from the injury, and that was sort of the thing in common, that there was any different combination of problems, all from getting hit in the head. Because, and I wanted to emphasize this while I was talking too, that I wanted to emphasize that because it was an injury to the brain, which controls the whole person, that each part of each system in your body, each part of your brain, each part of your body should be treated, because everyone is affected in every single part of their body in some way. And to only focus on headaches or vision or balance would be to miss an entire part of the injury. Because all the symptoms were invisible, all the emotions, all the struggles were in my brain, and one of those symptoms was articulating things that I was feeling. And anxiety also clouds that ability as well. So to have those symptoms and then also to have them be invisible so no one can see them, it's like when someone walks in on crutches to school, everyone crowds them and says, what happened, what happened? And I would walk into school having had the worst experience in my life, and then no one would notice, and I would have to tell them, but that was a struggle in its own. So I'm not playing any sports. I mean, I train, I work out, I'm still, but basically I love photography, I like studying culture and media and technology, so that's sort of been my outlet. I really like doing internships during the summer now that I have time, since I'm not doing lacrosse. So I've been able to fill that with other things that I like to do, and photography has sort of been a way for me to cope with that symptoms and everything.